We're heading all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida. The Jacksonville Jaguars in 2024. Quarterback got big money. They got some defensive players with big money. Is it time for this team to play big boy football and turn the corner? Nobody better to talk to than the host of Locked On Jags on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers. We love it when you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down and sports stop sporting as much as we want them to. It's summertime, and FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And now let's bring on today's esteemed guest, the host of Locked On Jaguars, Tony Wiggins. Tony, how you doing, man? How you getting through this offseason? And it's been a pretty busy offseason for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Some big contracts being divvied out, none more so than the star quarterback. And we're kind of all watching Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars and waiting for that star to shine as bright as we all have expected it to the last few years since he entered the NFL.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm glad to join you guys. It's fun. It's always too long in between times, but I know we're all just busy. How am I doing? It's like 85 degrees outside. It's been that way, by the way, for about 5 months. So I can't complain about anything, right? But yeah, Trevor got paid. And then after he got paid.
That's cool for you guys, right? You're saying that it's nice and tempered.
Cool,
okay.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It might get a little even hotter than that in a little while. So
okay.
But Trevor's pockets are hot. I tell you what, he got a bag and his pockets are hot, and now he's got a baby on the way. So the Prince of Promise is about to be the king around here. And I do believe that it was well worth it, because not just from the standpoint of what else you're going to do, but from the standpoint of, I mean, look at the money Kirk Cousins has got all these years. It's like buying a house in the neighborhood these days, man. It's like you got to pay the value to live in the neighborhood. That's what it is. And I also, by watching the games closely, know most of Trevor's struggles just comes from him trying too hard. And he has to not be a hero when it comes to it. Now, is he Joe Montana or Patrick Mahomes or Brady? No, but I don't know if any of those guys, maybe except Mahomes, I don't know if a whole bunch of those guys were that guy. Drew Brees, we love to talk about Drew Brees, but we don't talk about Drew Brees when he was in San Diego. So I just think we live in a microwave society right now. Everybody wants things really, really fast, and they want things to live up to what their expectations were, and that's just not reality.
So here's my take, and I'm curious if you agree or want to alter it in any way. Okay. Trevor Lawrence doesn't turn water into wine. He doesn't walk on water, but he's a darn good quarterback that might have great quarterback years ahead of him. And I'm not saying he is the worst supporting cast in the league. He certainly does not. However, he had major O-line issues, to say the least, very little running game to lean on, and no quarterback was affected more by drop passes than Lawrence, and it isn't even close.
No.
So you pay him and you build around him.
You pay him and you build around him, Matt. And the thing is for all of the naysayers, and most of that stuff didn't come from local people, although not media people, but in other walks of life, I run it. My mother-in-law came to my house to a barbecue 2 weekends ago, and I had to walk away. She said, "That boy ain't worth that money." And I'm like, okay, I ain't gonna argue.
We all have to deal with that.
I ain't gonna argue with you, but he kind of is worth the money, because she's not gonna understand all of the things that you just mentioned. In fact, on my show today, I mentioned that, and the reason why I always talk about Peyton Manning with him is because they did a real good job. Is even though Peyton was elite, they still structured everything around him as if he wasn't. They treated Peyton Manning like he was Brock Purdy. And now, sorry, Peacock, but you know what I mean.
You gotta be careful with that.
Well, they treated him like the best quarterback in the league. That's okay.
Yeah, but my point is they treat him like a guy who's a 7th round pick, but they structured everything around him. Mm-hmm. When Philly won the Super Bowl,
Tony, can I stop you real quick? I assume what you mean by that with Manning is we're going to draft Harrison, Wayne, Dallas Clark, Adai, first round pick after first round pick.
You got Howard Mudd, and you got Tom Moore. You ain't shaking a stick at those dudes when it comes to coaching. You know what I mean? Right. So I thought back to when Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl, and it blew me away. And I talked about this. I was talking about the Jaguars today, how they have to get better play out of Tank Bigsby. It rained in Miami that year. Peyton had 247 yards. But guess what? They had 191 yards rushing, and Joseph Adai led them with 10 receptions. That's a big deal in a championship. And when you think about the Eagles, when they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, which is all everybody wants to talk about, and Doug Peterson was the coach, not only did they have Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, and the left tackle who's going to the Hall. Those 3 first ballot Hall of Jason Peters. We don't even really think about that they had those guys. We also don't think about that between their 3 running backs, Corey Clement had 4 receptions, 400 yards. And then the Garrett Blount and Jay Ajayi combined for 23 carries, 447 yards. That's 250 yards from 3 running backs playing behind 3 first ballot Hall of Famers. But we have to look at that in retrospect, because even if we don't pay attention to the stats and we just say what happened in the game, you're going to talk about Nick Foles and how the defense stopped Rex Grossman. Nobody's going to mention the running game. And that's the devaluing of the running game is our own fault, because all you got to do is look at the stats, and those 2 games don't go that way without those numbers.
I say this all the time, and quarterbacks don't go into the Hall of Fame by themselves. Every time a quarterback goes into the Hall of Fame, guess what? His head coach goes into the Hall of Fame most of the time. He's got a wide receiver that goes into the Hall of Fame and an offensive lineman that goes into the Hall of Fame, and multiple other coaches from that staff that end up being head coaches elsewhere. Like it does take a village when it comes to quarterbacks, even the great ones. So it's really important. And the stat I saw this week, and it's perfect timing, this from Sharp Football, the highest rate of incompletions due to receiver error in the NFL. Tony, probably doesn't shock you that the Jacksonville Jaguars, number 1, 22% of Trevor Lawrence's passes were incomplete because of the failure and error of the receiver, not the quarterback. 22%. And you look at the best in the league was 12%. So that's taken a 60% passing quarterback and turn him into a 70% passing quarterback if you were on the other end of that and had fewer errors from your wide receivers.
Man, just think how many first downs that is, and extended drives and time of possession and the ripple effect on the whole team,
And then the defense has to go back on the field, and the front 7 ain't quite up to par, so now they're sucking wind. And then when you get into your depth, all of that stuff matters. Trevor had a little bit of a part in us not remembering that. And the reason why is because there are too many times on 3rd and 3, he'll go 18 yards down the field. It's like, no, dude, the dude's just take the first down. But like I say, he's trying too hard. But people want to talk about the fact that, they had one big hole on their offensive line, that's at center. And then the rest of it is the fact that their starters only played together 1 game. However, when the Jaguars said they needed to be more physical, we thought they were going to go out and get Robert Hunt and all these dudes on the line of scrimmage. That's not what they did. You know what they did? They got bigger physical wide receivers, and Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas Jr., Devin Duvernay, gone are Askew, and gone are Calvin Ridley. You know who wasn't real physical? It's like playing basketball. They say the old saying is you need guys that can't get knocked off their line. Well, no, you need guys that at the point of attack or where the ball hits you, they're having to fight through guys grabbing their arms. And they got to fight through stuff when they're holding on to the ball through contact. They improve their physicality at wide receiver. Sometimes we hear that, we think it's just in the trenches. It's not.
That's really important. I want to talk more about the new look wide receiver group and, of course, the defensive side of the ball. Some money spent there, and where this Jacksonville Jaguars team looks like they're headed in the AFC South, which is starting to be a pretty fun division in the NFL in 2024. Next with Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Look, I love sports. Wig loves sports. Matt loves sports. We all love sports. That's why we're here. We never want them to stop. But, kind of NBA playoffs and NHL seasons are over. And you got Major League Baseball all summer, which is fun. And I love betting on Major League Baseball games. And of course, you've got NFL futures, but FanDuel's cranking it up a little bit for not just new customers, but all customers this summer. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long at FanDuel. So all you got to do is head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. Tons of NFL futures. You think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to go win the division? Trevor Lawrence for MVP? Yeah, you can bet on all of it at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of not only the NFL, but Major League Baseball. So talk to me about this wide receiver group, Tony. Who are we drafting in our fantasy leagues, by the way? We know what to expect from Christian Kirk, and he's so good moving around, use him in a lot of different ways. A lot was made of his contract a couple of years ago, but he's a useful player, a good player. Is Brian Thomas Jr., though, potentially that number one guy? Fell to the Jaguars in the first round of the draft. You brought in Gabe Davis as well. Talk to me about the wide receiver group, how you expect this team to come together in the passing game, and who's going to make good for Trevor Lawrence this year that didn't last year.
And Tony, can you include Evan Ingram too? I mean, he's got an obscene amount of targets as a Jaguar. I wouldn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if you're going PPR, that's your dude right there. He's going to catch more balls than anybody, right? Now, he might only get 6 or 7 yards every time he catches it, but maybe that changes a little bit this year with all of those weapons. I'll start with the way that they acquired him. Gabe Davis. I saw Gabe Davis, and maybe it's me just focusing on one game, but I remember the Buffalo KC game. He caught the ball in the seams, in the deep seams right in the middle of the field. The Jaguars don't have a seam eater. That sounds weird, but we'll just move on. What they have is Evan Ingram catches most of his balls from the hash towards the outside. Mm-hmm. And they just don't have that dude where you see teams like KC, man, they always got the dude. Kelsey's always just like running down the middle, just waving his hand, and it gives the quarterback an easier target and an easier throw. I think Gabe Davis adds a little bit of that. I think he's probably going to hover around that 55 catch area. Christian Kirk's going to be Christian Kirk. He's going to probably lead the team in first downs because he's going to be the third down target, and he's going to be a real disadvantage because he'll get to finally play inside. That's what they tried to do with Calvin Ridley, finally be able to move Kirk inside and stop making him a number one or number two playing flanker or split end, and he's more suited to be in the slot. Brian Thomas Jr. is a very, very good player, but he's a rookie. And I was very, very high on him. And he got the treatment in the draft because he was with Malik Neighbors. He got the same treatment that Justin Jefferson got, and he went to 27 because Jefferson played with Chase, who we all knew was like Antonio Brown on steroids in college. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like Chase was so much of a physical beast that we forgot Justin Jefferson, this little 2-star recruit, and he fell to the 27 pick, and now he's like the number 1 or number 2 receiver in the league. I'm not saying that BTJ is going to do that, but I think he's a little bit different. He's going to add a speed element, and while he might not be a week-to-week guy that's going to tear up the stat sheet like a young Terrell Owens, he is probably going to lead them in big plays. And, you'll get 7 or 8 times where he's just running the 9 route or running the post, where he's going to really be the take the top off the defense guy. And you can do that without having a volume of catches.
So we talked about the O-line briefly. You mentioned the center problem last year. Mitch Morse falls into their lap. I assume he still has some good football, ahead of him. If we can assume some degree of health for this group, which was obviously a problem last year, are you comfortable with the starting 5?
If they can stay on the field together and I can take a good look, I'll be more comfortable with them. But I'm comfortable from the fact that I
don't see a star in the group.
Well,
Robinson's pretty good. Yeah, I mean,
I think Anton Harrison is the best player.
Oh, okay.
And I think he's headed towards. By the time he had a rough start, they played KC early in the week. They weren't prepared for them to move. I don't know why they weren't prepared, but Chris Jones goes to big end on third downs and he embarrasses the kid. He's a rookie playing in his first game, man. They should have known better than to leave him over there. But as the year progressed, he played against Nick Bosa. He got better. He played against other guys that were those dudes and he got better. And I think he's their most talented guy. Robinson is their bully. They love him, but you look at his numbers in the run game and I think he graded it out worse than anybody, but he was also unhealthy. Here's my question. I know Moore solidifies things up front, and that's big because Travis Etienne was hit faster than any other running back last year when he got the ball. And we literally saw Luke Fortner on the ground a lot. Just totally, when guards are pulling, he wasn't supposed to be there. He's supposed to be gone. And guess what? He's getting pushed back. So the pulling guard has to go around him, and it just screwed all of the plays up. So the question I have is, did they do enough? But I think, and Matt, you know this, you go into free agency, people behind the scenes know a whole lot more. And I think early on they identified the interior guard market is going to be out of control. Just look at Robert Hunt. They were like, "No, we ain't doing that. We got to spend our money somewhere else because we're not going to be able to do that." So they re-signed Ezra Cleveland to a very friendly 3-year, $29 million deal. They had traded for him at the trade deadline, and Phil Rosh, the offensive line coached him in Minneapolis. They restructured Brandon Sheriff, who wasn't bad, but he just wasn't the all-pro that they traded for. Yeah. And then he's next to Anton Harrison, and they think they got a healthy Cam Robinson back. Now they got the depth piece with Walker Little as their swing. They get Cooper Hodges back, who missed his rookie season with injury last year. Fortin is now your backup at center. And then they did something that they don't do enough of. They drafted Javon Foster in the 4th round, a kid from Missouri, an SEC kid. You got to, at some point, start to develop your own people. You can't use free agency in the 1st round of the draft to keep putting the lines together. And one thing
it wouldn't shock me if Foster replaces Sheriff in a year or two,
Right. So I mentioned to Trent, I said, I know you want more versatility on your line, and you want more numbers, but that's almost an oxymoron, because guess what you really want? You want your 5 guys to play together all the time. It's not like the defensive line where you're in a rotation. Yeah. So I want to have these dudes, but I really don't want to ever see them. I want my 5 guys to be like the Temptations and be in one step and have that cohesion and have all of that continuity, because the more you mix them up, the worse it gets. And that's just the nature of that business.
Matt Williamson dropped his fantasy football running back rankings, and we talked about Travis Etienne and what he's been for the Jaguars, and the volume he's gotten. Watching Tank Bigsby last year, 3rd round pick. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wig, but I feel like the Jaguars don't really like Bigsby that much. I don't know if it's like a doghouse situation, but maybe, not a ton of passing game value. Whatever it is, I came away not being very high on Tank Bigsby, and maybe there's more to come for him. You never want to bury a guy after a rookie season, but I feel pretty comfortable going into the season thinking that Travis Etienne is going to be on the field every down he can.
Yeah, and I did, believe it or not, I recorded my show about Tank Bigsby today. He's on my thumbnail, so this is a great segue to that. Check out the Locked On Jaguars episode I did on Tank Bigsby, and I said how they needed him. And the reason why I said that, and I had those stats available from those numbers from those teams that won the Super Bowl, is because I did some research, and I said, those teams won with another running back. Now, Etienne's their guy. He's their 1,600 combined yard guy, right? He's dynamic. He's what Brian Westbrook was in the old Andy Reid offense. He's that guy. He's a screen guy. He's a running back. He's all of that stuff. But the thing is you never know when he's going to get chipped, banged up, have to come out for a series a little bit, and your whole program can't fall apart. And you can't just have Dearness Johnson. Dearness Johnson's a nice player, but he's a real nice number 3. They drafted Bigsby in round 3 to be their bell cow, the part of their game that when they need to start running the football and leaning on people, that they can do that. The problem with him is he averaged 2.6 yards a carry because, 1, the center situation, but 2, when he got it, he was running up the back of the lineman. And, that's what young guys do. They get it and they want to do something so bad that they're running. They're just running, and it look like they don't know where they want to go with the ball. And then a couple of times in the passing game, he had some bad luck. Ball hits his hands, tips up, interception in the red zone. Ball hits his hands, interception, lateral. The other team record, and then he had 2 fumbles. So you're talking about on 60 touches, the ball hit the ground 4 times. Can't happen. That is for a team that went into week 18 needing to win a game to get in the playoffs. Can't happen. I guarantee you, he lost one of those games with some of that stuff he did.
I also think I want to talk defense on the last segment, but I do think it's telling. I was so high on Bigsby going into the season, and he disappointed. I mean, there's no way around that. But if they would have used a 3rd or 4th round pick on a back, I think that'd have been a lot more telling. And they didn't, so he's going to have a shot at least.
Yeah, he absolutely will.
Quickest way off the field for a running back, bad in pass pro, or you can't hold on to the football. And so young running backs, if they don't hit early, that's usually the reason why. You good for one more segment, Wig?
I'm riding out, man. I'm with you.
Let's do it. We got to talk defense. Let's talk AFC South. Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. And when it comes to talking things out with an unbiased person in your life, there's nothing more important. And sometimes when it comes to therapy, it's just that weekly check-in. You need to check in with somebody. Make sure you're hitting the points you're trying to hit in your life. And a wise man once said, comparison is the thief of joy. And it's easy to envy other people's lives, especially in the era we live in. You see it a lot with professional athletes and in the in this profession that we work in, and how important what it looks like your life is on social media versus what your life really is. So stop comparing yourselves to those things you see on social media, right? In reality, probably everyone doesn't have it all together like it looks like their choreographed online life looks like. And therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. And remember, it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule at BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, let's talk defense. Some money spent on the defensive side of the ball, Wig, and it's so important. Eric Armstead, a player I know well, played in San Francisco for a lot of years. Free agent signee now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. You got a bunch of first rounders in the front seven. A big year for Devin Lloyd at linebacker. A big year for Trayvon Walker on the defensive line. And then Josh Allen gets paid as well. Where do you rank Josh Allen? Let's start there, because we talked about the big money spent on Trevor Lawrence. Josh Allen, where does he rank for you amongst that class of just phenomenal 2019 edge rushers and some of the better young edge rushers in the NFL?
I think he's top 7, top 8, and that may sound like I'm not super high on him. Having 17 sacks.
It's hard to crack those top 5, though.
It's hard, man.
Yeah.
It's hard. The thing is he's sort of he does things quietly. You know, he's only had 2 of those 5 seasons. He had 2 of them with double-digit sacks, and then he was injured for another one. And then other than that, the team was pretty bad. But he's also the dude that, and you both can have an appreciation for this. And Matt, you've been in those buildings. He's first in, last out. He goes home to his wife and kids, do Bible study, but he plays like a dog. He's first in, last out.
You like investing in those guys. It makes you feel a little bit better writing that check.
In the practice with technique. He's the dude that, like, he may not come to a involuntary minicamp or one of those mini-camps, and he may not show up when he's supposed to. And you ask the coaches, and they'll go, "Oh, we ain't worried about him." So that's all you need to know. That when he gets here, he'll be ready to go. And so yeah, he's been a very, very good player for Trayvon, who I'm telling you, man, people can talk about. I know they love Hutchinson. I'm telling you, there are some things that this kid does that does not show up in the stats. And Mike Tomlin said it in his press conference before one of their games. He said the dude's a total game wrecker, and y'all don't even understand it. And it's the physicality. Watch how many running backs, and this ain't me trying to be violent. Watch how many running backs leave the game when they play the Jaguars, and then go back and look at who the one that sent him to the bench for all series. It's him. That's just that dude that he is, man. He's big, he's physical, he's strong, and then he messed around and had 10.5 sacks last year, and he should have had 16 because he just barely, right when he got his hands on something, he got pushed away, or they called a penalty, or he did get a sack, and the Jaguars had a penalty. He is ready to go, and I think Ryan Nielsen has had very, very good success with guys like Cam Jordan, with the Rob Fredrickson, that power pass rusher, that, the Smith. What was the guy that played for the 49ers back when
Justin
Smith?
Yeah. And Alden.
Dude. You don't really know Howie Long is. You don't really know what is he, a big end? Is he a 3 technique? No, you know what he is. He's a football player, and he's gonna bust somebody in the mouth. Especially once you improve the scheme and improve the people around him, he's gonna have a huge year. Eric Armstead is going to be a big addition. He's the Calais Campbell to this team, and we talk about Calais because he was such a big part of the 2017 Jaguars. He gives you a little bit of inside, but then as I watched his tape, he lined up at that 4B, that big end position sometimes with the 49ers. You're like, where's Bosa? Oh, don't worry about it. He's over there too. So the versatility, the size, the fact that they have a whole bunch of able-bodied dudes that just know how to get up the field and get it and I'm glad they went back to a 4-man front because I hated the fact that Trayvon's 275 pounds and he's outside and he's in the flat when you needed him to be chasing the quarterback. So that stuff's going to go away. I'm really, really excited about the defense. Got a little bit of question about the secondary, but that doesn't mean they need to go out and add people because that would be hedging their bets. They're going to have to depend on the people that they already have and some of the young guys that they're bringing up.
I'm with you with that on the 4-man front too, and it's just going to help statistically as well, and probably help recognition wise for Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker there. And Trent Baalke's trying to build that thing like he did in San Francisco. He was around when Alden and Justin Smith were there, and he's the one that drafted Eric Armstead. And you talked about the off-field stuff with Josh Allen. Eric Armstead was known as the blueprint in San Francisco, same type of guy. So it's hard not to like what they're doing up front there. Devin Lloyd, though, what do we expect from him this year? And the back seven is going to be really important too, because you got to get off the field on third down, Wig, and sometimes your pass rush does not get home.
You do. Let me start in the back. Chris Richard, very familiar. And so this sets up for me. I always try to look at the long term. Chris Richard actually was a dude that's a candidate to be a defensive coordinator. If Ryan Nielsen is as good as I think he is, he's out of here in 1 year. I'm telling you, that's just everybody. I talked to Ross Jackson when he's with people love this dude, man, and the way he communicates and how he gets it. Some people thought Atlanta should have just hired him instead of going out of the organization, outside of the organization. That means you take Richard and you plug him right in, and they're very familiar with each other, and you don't lose the consistency from year to year that you already have. I think they're going to be okay. They went and got Ronald Darby, who played with and coached with Chris Richards last year. They have Tyson Campbell, who I think they believe in. This is what I mean about going out and get other people. If you believe in the kid, you're going to give him a contract extension. You got to just, at some point, you got to make a decision. I love Andre Sisco at safety. Got to stay healthy. Antonio Johnson was a big surprise out of A&M last year. He's going to start at safety. And then the move was a little bit of a head scratcher. They went and got Savage from They went and got the Savage kid from Green Bay in free agency. I don't know what he is, but they're going to play him in the slot the way Brian Branch plays up in Detroit. So it's not really a corner, but he's a big guy who can roam around a little bit and play a little bit of safety, maybe even come off of the corner or in certain situations back off the line. Now let me get to Devin Lloyd. Looks like Tarzan. Up until this point, he hadn't played that way. Mm-hmm. He's sort of like his teammate Quay Walker up in Green Bay, right? But now he missed training camp his first year with a hamstring, and then last year it took him a while to get going. The thing that used to bother me about him was if you ran anybody across his face mask, you beat him every time. Constantly out of position, didn't know if he was supposed to follow the guy or release the guy. Just confusion. So here's what Ryan Nielsen does. We're going to take all of that out. Not that the kid ain't smart, but we're going to remove all of that stuff. And what we're going to do, we're going to let him do the things that he does well and not worry about the things that he doesn't do. If you get him going downhill, they thought he was Fred Warner because he was kind of like a hybrid safety, inside-outside linebacker. Fred Warner don't grow on trees. But he can be a very, very good player. This is a big year for him because this is the year that's going to determine if he plays well this year, you'll know it because they'll pick up his fifth-year option because he's a first-round pick. If they don't, you'll know then it ain't quite what we thought it was, and we got a backup plan with Chad Muma. We got a backup plan with a couple of other people. But he's an okay player, but maybe he hasn't lived up to being a first-round pick that they traded back up into the first round to get. And I think that's the part that kind of gives you a hand slap a little bit. It's like you actually trade up for somebody who hasn't lived up to expectations.
Those linebackers too, those off-ball backers. Matt and I talk about it. It's one of the big pitfalls in the NFL draft these days. It's really
take time, man.
Linebackers. It's all about instincts there.
But you know what? Maybe what happens is, and I'll do this. Sometimes I always say teams don't draft bad players that ruin organizations. More bad organizations draft good players that ruin those players. And I think back to a guy like Kyle Van Noy that when he was drafted in Detroit and they ran a base 4-3 and they were going to play him at Sam linebacker. I'm like, that ain't what he's supposed to be doing, right? So he washed out. It didn't work. You look back now 10 years later, Kyle Van Noy had a hell of a career, man. Mm-hmm. He was just in the wrong spot early on, and he's like a jumbo linebacker. So with Lloyd, you look at him, he's like 6'3", 248. Where does a guy play? Where's a guy that big play? You don't really know. Mm-hmm. It's like Michael Parsons without the production. It's like, what is he supposed to be doing? It's like that Harold Perkins kid who ain't as big. They don't know where he's supposed to play at LSU right now. Matt, I know you're a draft guy, and it's like, what does he do well? It takes a coach like Ryan Nielsen that knows how to put guys in certain schemes and knows how to get the best of them. Then they'll try to figure it out.
Yep, and a GM that knows what he's looking for and bringing in the right talent for that scheme. Hassan Reddick is another one. They tried to make him an off-ball linebacker. He was an undersized edge rusher. Yeah. Nobody wanted that. He's too small to play out on the edge. No, he's just fine playing out on the edge. Yeah. He'll get you a bunch of sacks if you just put him in the right spot. And so there's so much that goes into that on an NFL football field. Wig, before you go, we gotta lock this down. We gotta ask you where the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to finish in this division, because I'm getting excited about it. We've talked a lot about the South so far this offseason. We had Tyler rolling on of Locked On Titans as well, and they're up and comers, probably not ready to compete though with the Texans and Jags in that division. How do you see this playing out in the South?
Well, I used to call it AFC South. I used to call it the Mountain West of the NFL. It's like nobody care about them. You know what I'm saying? But now I think it's going to be a race to win the division, and it has to be, because the AFC North looks like they have a division full of teams that can all win it. And if you have that, that means that those wild card slots get eaten up real quick. So you can't depend on being a wild card. You have to aim to win the division. You have to win this division. I think it's going to come down to between them and Houston. And but you have to watch those sneaky Colts. We forget, dog, they were like a drop fourth down pass away from being the team that would have went to the playoffs once the Titans beat the Jaguars the next day. So it's like, dude, this division is good, and it's going to be whether you can win those. You got to sweep Tennessee. The Jaguars didn't do it last year. You got to win those games. If they beat Tennessee in Week 18, they're back in the playoffs, and nobody's saying Trevor Lawrence doesn't deserve a contract extension. They're going to be saying he led them to the playoffs 2 straight years for the first time in 20 years. It's down to Houston. It's Houston, but you got to make sure you split with the Colts at least, and you got to sweep the Titans, because if you don't, that wild card might be very, very hard for you to get with a division record that doesn't hold up to the rest of the AFC.
Couldn't agree more, Tony. I mean, especially you got the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins in the East. And as you said, there's 4 teams in the North that are going to be in the hunt. It might come down to division records for the South, And
we play the Raiders, who is that scrappy team. That's another game that's on the road 3 days before Christmas. The Chiefs are going to be what the Chiefs are. I don't think we have the Chargers this year, but they're going to be – Harbaugh's going to have them playing. People just said they underachieved. You ain't underachieving with him. If anything, it's the other way. You know what I'm saying? So you got to watch all of these things, man. The NFL is something. I can't wait to get to it here in training camp in a few weeks, man, and get back to it.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Check in with Tony Wiggins every day on Locked On Jaguars, and of course, Peacock and Williamson, as we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network, 5 times a week, every day. Matt and I doing our thing at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Make sure you find Amp Wig on Twitter as well. Matt and I back tomorrow, right here, Peacock and Williamson.